All right, without a doubt, one of the greats in WAFB history. He's worked for many national networks, ESPN, CBS, currently with Fox Sports. Tim Brando. Tim, thanks so much for dropping by.
Good to be with you, Jacques. Always is.
Tim, crazy days at LSU. You were there, 1986, 35 years ago, and it seems like what is old is new again, right? Crazy days at LSU Part 2. How can a guy that leads the program to the best season ever lose his job in less than 2 years? It seems impossible, but that's what's happened.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, Jacques, it's both unique to LSU, but also it's also commonplace in today's college football. And it's kind of like the twilight zone of Baton Rouge meets with the rest of the country. I think our broadcast team, Spencer and myself, are the one runaway freight train for coaching firings, either after or before we get there. By example, at the time of this taping that you and I are having on Wednesday, we're headed to Baylor and TCU for our game on Saturday. And Gary Patterson, after 21 years, they have a statue of him outside the stadium at Amon G. Carter Stadium, and he's gone. He's history. He's out. And we also did the game in the Memorial Coliseum, Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, when Stanford beat USC. And as we were leaving the next day, Clay Helton was fired. We were in Lubbock, Texas, just about 3 weeks ago, when a 5-2 Texas Tech team looking to get bowl eligible lost a 14-point lead in the second half. And by the time I got home to Chateau Brando, he was fired. Matt Wells was gone. So Spencer and I have been like the Grim Reapers to college football coaches. They either get fired or they're about to be if we get to assign one of their games. So, look, what's happening here is with the transfer portal, with NIL, with realignment, a lot of athletic directors that are concerned about the direction that their programs are going in are saying, gosh, we got to get this fixed right away. And if my fan base is unhappy with my coach, social media may be driving some of this too. Okay. Because, if you got a coach that's got a 5-2 record in Lubbock, Texas, really? In the Big 12, you're going to fire him? Well, they just weren't happy with the guy. They wanted somebody else, probably Sonny Dykes, whose dad was a legend at Texas Tech. Well, I think Scott Woodward wanted to keep up with USC, or maybe vault ahead of USC and say, you know what, we're a better job than USC. So we're the best job available, in college football. That's what he had in mind. Again, a lot of it is about business, not necessarily just about the coach and the team's record or the disfavor that the fan base may have. I don't doubt that Scott wants to bring in his own guy. I don't doubt that LSU's in a special set of circumstances with its Title IX lawsuit and all the strings that are attached to Ed as it relates to that. And so they're looking to put themselves in the ballpark to start talking to people, whoever they can talk to, as quickly as they possibly can. So if the job is open, you can get on the horn. You can start calling people. And I think that's what most of these ADs have in mind.
30 years ago, way back when, I think the 30-year anniversary, Curly Holman, his first year, Tim, he had 4 losing seasons at LSU. They kept him around 4 years. And these days, they don't even give you the year to see if you can turn it around. So yeah, that's where we are in today's game.
I remember Joe Dean, the late great Joe Dean, was athletic director when he was getting rid of Curly Holman and looking for his next coach. And Pat Sullivan was at TCU, the late Pat Sullivan, and he wanted to hire him. They had just gone 7-4 at a dormant program, really. And Pat was the guy that Joe wanted. But when he found out that Pat had a buyout that was, I think, something like, I don't know, $250,000, $300,000, Joe was like, well, we're not going to pay that. And he wound up hiring Jerry DiNardo away from Vanderbilt. That should tell you how times have changed financially. Okay. We can gather this money from the TAF or whatever you want to call it, the TAF at another school, IPTAY at Clemson, I pay 10 a year. We can go gather 15, 20, $25 million like that in today's world.
Like my local friend Matt Moscona said, they didn't give Ed Orgeron $17 million to go away to be cheap on the next coach. They are going to spend money on the next coach. Tim, as we're sitting here today, Lincoln Riley's name has come up this week a lot, it seems like. And there's been a push lately, the young offensive coach. He's 38 years old. He's 54-9 at Oklahoma. He's made the playoffs 3 times. He's lost to an SEC team each time. Oklahoma is coming to the SEC, whether that's next year or the following year. They're coming. Would he leave Oklahoma for LSU? That's a big question.
Here's why that's coming up. Scott Woodward, when he was at Washington, got Chris Peterson. Nobody thought that he'd ever leave Boise State. He had turned down God knows how many schools, power schools that wanted him. They got him, and Washington did wind up getting into the college football playoff within a matter of a few years. Didn't go far because they had to play Alabama, but it's a hell of a hire. He gets to A&M, Scott does. Nobody thought that Jimbo Fisher was going to leave. God knows Joe Oliva tried hard to get him to come to Baton Rouge, couldn't get him. Woodward got him. And those are big splash hires. They were the top names that were available in college football coaching at the time. Scott is going to go for the biggest name available. And Lincoln Riley, there are no multiple national championship guys out there from a coaching standpoint now. Okay. Dabo's coming off a bad year. Urban's in the NFL and has his own set of problems now. Lincoln Riley is the guy in college football. If you want to make the biggest splash, that's the guy that you want to go after. I get all that. I don't think it's happening. Why would Lincoln leave Oklahoma for LSU? I'm just going to tell you, and this may upset my friends in Baton Rouge, but Oklahoma is a better job than LSU in college football. It's got greater history. From a recruiting standpoint, it recruits itself every bit as much as LSU recruits itself. And if Lincoln's going to go anywhere to make a bigger name for himself or more money, I don't think it's going to be Baton Rouge. I really don't. First 3 calls to me still remain Jimbo number 1. Second call goes to James Franklin. Third call, in my opinion, goes to Dave Aranda, who I'll be seeing this week. And I just talked to today. He's handling it in a politically correct manner, but he is not denouncing the concept of he's not flatly saying no to the thought of coming to LSU. Those are the 3 I see that are the legitimate calls that have to be made. Now they're not going to say anything right now, but I think once the season is over, I think all 3 could be in the ballpark.
Since you're covering Dave Aranda this week, let's talk about him. For a while when he was at LSU, I always wondered, did he want to be a head coach or not? And it seems that Ed kind of, I don't want to say pushed him out, but kind of nudged him out after 2019 was what I heard. They wanted to run a different defense. They wanted to go to 4-3 instead of 3-4. And, not to pile on Ed, but he made the infamous comments before 2020. Our defense is so much better right now than it was a year ago under Dave Aranda. Dave is light years of the exact opposite, Tim, in personality of Ed. Ed is very bombastic, Red Bull, whatever, rock star. And Dave, apologies to, for the Star Wars nerdy reference, but he's like a Jedi, he's reserved. He's very cerebral. He's, so that would be a big change. But if he got a great offensive coach with his defensive mind, everyone says nobody makes defensive adjustments like Dave Aranda at halftime. Could be a winner.
No, he would be a winner. That'd be a great hire, in my opinion. And he is cerebral. He's a defensive nerd. He's gathering information and making changes all the time. Ed was wrong about the 4-man front. In today's defenses, we're going towards not just a 3-man front, but a 2-man front in a lot of cases. You might take some linebackers, some hybrids, and move them to defensive end, and at times have 4 guys with their hands in the ground. But I'm putting together depth charts every week, and it's very rare that I see anything other than a 3-4 or a 3-5-2. I'm seeing dropping 7 and dropping 8 in the secondaries a great deal. And Aranda, in my mind, had just enough of a taste of LSU to be intrigued by an offer if one came. And I don't doubt that he could put together a hell of a staff in a heartbeat. I think that James Franklin has maybe got the bravado, the swagger that more fans in Baton Rouge would be drawn to. I think a lot of fans down there want that. It's part of the makeup of Baton Rouge. They may not want it over the top to the point of Ed O, but they still want some of that. And Franklin is kind of a buttoned up, chest out, has media savvy and swagger. And when you look at his resume, it shows 9 wins in a season at Vanderbilt, in Nashville. And to do that there makes you wonder, oh my goodness, what could he do, with the resources at LSU? I think he's probably a higher candidate than Dave would be, but I think Dave is certainly on the list to call after you give Franklin a buzz. I think Franklin is also very high on the USC hit list too, which also makes it competitive, and makes LSU a little bit more interested because there's some leverage there. I think that without question, the athletic director out in Los Angeles has interest in James Franklin.
You spoke about swagger and attitude and Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, a lot of people tell me, not a Scott Woodward hire. And after kind of having to, I don't want to say babysit, but call Ed Orgeron to the principal's office a few times, Lane Kiffin would be, I don't think the athletic director wants to be apologizing or, answering questions about his head coach and his off the field stuff.
Yeah, but I think I've seen a big change in Lane. Yeah. He had his popcorn moment that he had to apologize for before the Alabama game.
And he owned it, and he was funny about it too.
He did. And I think that up until that time, his maturation from where he had been, what we remembered from his days at Tennessee and then on to USC and so on, he had changed the narrative on himself. He had really gotten a really quality makeover. His understanding of the modern day internet athlete, his use of social media in a way that is both crafty, but not over the top. Yeah. He doesn't alienate older fans that wouldn't know what Twitter or Snapchat were, but at the same time, he identifies with the players in a very big way. I just wonder if the association with Ed, which is a very good one, as you know, I would want to know whether that helps or hurts. I don't know. I'm not sure. If some of what Woodward said to us about LSU having a friend in Ed Orgeron and Ed Orgeron always bleeding LSU purple and gold is true, which is obviously what they said at the presser, then you would think that maybe Lane would be in the ballpark, that there might be something to it. But to your point, after Ed, do you really want to go in that direction? So I'm lukewarm on the idea, but I certainly think it would be in my opinion, a home run hire. Yeah. All the guys I've mentioned are guys that I think would really be good fits. Some might be fitting more quickly than others. Like I said, I think Franklin would probably be more to the satisfaction of some fans who maybe want to win the press conference. James may win that for you a little bit more quickly than Aranda. Mm-hmm. But in Aranda, you know what you're getting. And in Jimbo, you really know what you're getting. So all these guys, I think, are people that you want to have on your list and believe that you have a shot at it. And any one of those guys, any one of those 4 or 5 guys that we've talked about, including Kiffin, if Scott were to bring him in, I think you'd have to consider that a heck of a hire. Now, look, if it happens to be Lincoln Riley, then even I would go, oh, wow. I would be shocked by that. I would, but I wouldn't put it past Scott because that's his calling card. And by all accounts, and I've heard them all. He's a hot name. The one we haven't touched on is Tucker. And my only issue with Mel Tucker is it would be his third job in 4 years. You're going to have to explain that one to me, both on his end of it and LSU's end of it. St. Nick has waved the wand and said that this is who you need to get. That's what he told Tom Izzo. And that's why Michigan State hired him. Tom is a good friend of mine. And Tom made no bones about that with me. He said, well, Saban said, we need to get Mel Tucker. And I told our guys, and boom, we got him. And look what's happened. So, and Tucker's been there. He was there with Nick, as you know. But I don't know. That to me, it would be a little soon to be leaving Michigan State, especially after all they've accomplished this year.
Yeah, and his body of work as a head coach is very small. This is only
his
third year as a head coach.
Right.
I heard a national radio host talking about the thrilling win over Michigan, Tim, and saying Michigan State fans enjoy him while you can. He's going to be the next head coach at LSU. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not, but certainly
I think a lot of people, especially those that are in the business of talking about such things on a daily basis, they know there's a new president at LSU. They know that he's an African American. There's a belief that it might be time for an African American head coach at LSU. And by the way, James Franklin is an African American. So whether that matters to the point of automatically saying these guys should be the front runners because of that, I don't think so. I just don't. But in either case, those are all factors that are being brought up when you hear the conversation. Yeah.
And Charles Hannegriff, local guy, I think when he put out his initial list, James Franklin was at the top of his list as well. Like you said, 9 wins at Vanderbilt. That's not a minor miracle. That is a miracle.
That is a miracle. That's Steve Spurrier winning an ACC title at Duke. Okay, yes. An ACC football title at Duke is what helped him get the Florida job. And getting 9 wins at Vanderbilt. And, it's not that long ago. We remember that year. I mean, that was, I called one of those games. They beat Georgia one day, the day LSU was playing up at Ole Miss in Oxford. And I was able to fly from one game to the other after doing it on CBS to see that game. My daughter was in school at Ole Miss. And as you know, my oldest daughter was an LSU girl. So I made it back for a little day-night SEC doubleheader that day.
A couple more names I want to talk to you about. I don't want to call it a miracle worker, but no one has had the success with the Raging Cajuns that Billy Napier has had. Another Nick Saban disciple, certainly is described as extremely organized, meticulous, day-to-day operation, has built the Cajuns program similar to what Saban did at LSU in Alabama. I've been told by a few people, 4 or 5 people have to say no before it gets to Napier, but I do think he's going to be a star at a big school one day.
Oh, he is. He's already turned down 2 SEC jobs. And, but to the folks in Lafayette's credit, man, they stepped up. And for a Sun Belt conference school, they've invested in the program in a manner that no other school in this part of the Sun Belt Conference has stepped up. But yeah, whether he's at LSU down the road, he'll be someplace else in the SEC very soon. I think that Billy, because of his demeanor and his personality, would sort of fall into the Aranda category. He's not, he doesn't seek publicity.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't mind being a little bit under the radar.
Yeah.
And that's just not what LSU's job is all about. It's usually front and center, all eyes on me, that kind of thing. When Saban, we need to remind ourselves, when Saban came to LSU, that's kind of who he was. Nobody really knew that much about him. It was a hire that Joe Dean and Mark Emmert had to defend when it was made. He had just lost to DiNardo and LSU in the Independence Bowl in my hometown, and lost rather handily with one of his best Michigan State teams to DiNardo, like 2 years earlier. And but look what happened. Things do change over time once you find out what you need to find out. Billy Napier, to me, has all the requisite tools to be in the same category with those names I mentioned. Again, I think that would be a quality hire. I think a lot of times, if fans, especially in Baton Rouge, LSU fans, that look down their noses at places like Louisiana Lafayette or Louisiana Tech or ULM, they think of it as being a lesser program, and that but that's what he did there. This is, well, look around, okay, see what's going on. The college football world is flat, and teams like, whether the committee recognizes it or not, they clearly right now don't. If you watch the rankings the other night, what a joke. But college football now is flat, and building a winner and a sustained success at a place that's got less resources, man, that's to be envied. It's not, you shouldn't look down upon people on that and say, well, I'm not sure he can step up to this level. Billy Napier's he's coached with both Dabo and with Nick, and he knows how to run a big time program, no doubt in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, I think you look at the records of any of the LSU previous hires for the most part. I think Les Miles was 28-21 at Oklahoma State before he gets to LSU. And with those resources, he won 80% of his games. And like you said, when you took a look at Jerry DiNardo's record and Saban's, they were kind of like, well, are we really getting a great coach here? So
I haven't mentioned this, Jacques, but I want to. One of the things that Scott has in his hip pocket that Mike Bone at USC, the athletic director there, does not. And I do think that if we're talking about a national search, that's who you're battling against. You're battling against USC for the best available coach for college football. He can go out and say to whoever the candidate is, there's no other program in college football that can say they've won 3 national championships within 18 years with 3 different coaches. And you could argue that 2 of those 3 coaches were above average, not great,
right? Because
if they had been great, you would have held on to them. You didn't. Yeah. So that gets the attention of candidates real quick. And that's why I think the LSU job is the best job available, including USC.
2 more guys, Tim, I want to talk to you about. So you mentioned Jimbo Fisher, and I think some LSU fans just have Jimbo fatigue at this point. I joked the other day, Jimbo's like the Olympics. It feels like he comes around every 4 years, talking about him getting the job. And somebody said, well, Scott Woodward's already pulled off Jimbo once. He wants a new challenge. He wants to do something different. And some guy the other day said, oh, he's too old. I'm like, well, he's 56. I mean, that's not really old. I mean, he could coach another.
Could you handle 14 years of Jimbo and get him to 70 like Saban just turned? I think Jimbo would be good till 70. Don't you?
So. Oh, yeah. I saw after Saban laid the smackdown, Tim, on LSU last year in Tiger Stadium, I watched him jog into the locker room, and just like, when is this going to end?
Yeah.
So, somebody said it was interesting the other day that Nick said, I feel like I have 10 years left. And then the word out of LSU was they were going to give some guy a 10-year contract, but whatever. How about that, Tim? How about if Nick Saban steps to the podium and says, me and Miss Terry, we always regretted leaving LSU and all those years ago. We're back to finish our careers here in Baton Rouge.
Get that little palace on Highland ready. We're coming back.
But Jimbo Fisher, he got asked about it, Tim, and I said there were some incorrect headlines like Jimbo shoots down LSU. He never shot it down. He just talked real fast about, I love my chancellor. I love College Station. I love the stadium. I love the talks a million miles an hour, but he never shot it down. So
he was almost too emphatic for me. A lot of times when guys are defending where they are, they pour it on a little too much. And I kind of think, all right, for him to be this convincing, he knew this question was coming. There's no doubt he knew the question was coming, and he got a little theatrical with it to convince the people at home. Hey man, we're good. I'm not going, but he never denounced the idea at all. Didn't say he wouldn't take the phone call. None of them ever do. They've been, Jimmy Sexton works with his guys now. He knows there are certain areas where you just don't go when you're denying without really denying. So I'm with you. I like I said, I think he'll take the call. And it'll just be a question of, Scott having done the deal, and his contract is just like Saban's at Alabama, is that he could walk away whenever he wants without a buyout. And down deep, that's why the Aggies are a little concerned, and I would, I'm sorry, but I'd just say it. Would you want to wake up every day now as a head coach at A&M with Texas now in the league, to go along with having to deal with recruiting and Friday night lights every stinking day in the state of Texas, knowing that you're having to deal with all that once Texas gets into the league? LSU is a better job than Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
There have been more national titles won there by different people and recently. So other than the property taxes and the parish taxes, LSU gets all the other checks and all the other boxes, in my view.
Yeah. All right. You cover a lot of games on the West Coast. When this whole thing first started, one name I came across that was intrigued by, but every time I bring him up, I get shot down. No, not happening. Too much like Coach O, CEO. Mario Cristobal at Oregon. To me, he's interesting because LSU has not been very good on the offensive line. That is his background. He's recruited a ton of offensive linemen. He was with Saban for a nice chunk of time recently, recruited Cam Robinson and some of those offensive linemen, and he's got a spectacular record at Oregon, right? So
he does.
What about him?
Well, if Oregon, who I think is only where they are in the college football playoff standings, they're only where they are because the committee wanted Ohio State to be 5. So they put Oregon 4 because they beat them head to head. Okay, I don't think Oregon is 4. I don't think Ohio State's 5, but Ohio State is pure playoff privilege, just like Alabama. So they put Oregon 4. I think Oregon will lose again. They could lose to Washington. I mean, the Pac-12 is just screwy this year. Absolutely. I mean, it's Twilight Zone every time they tee it up. Hard to understand or comprehend. UCLA now can't beat their shadows. I mean, they're losing game after game after looking like world beaters against LSU to start the season.
I want to give you a compliment real quick. I asked you way back when, I don't know, June, July, I asked you about that LSU-UCLA matchup. You said dangerous game for LSU.
Yeah, no, it was August 6th because I was speaking to the Board of Supervisors on Dale's behalf that day. I remember exactly
August 6th.
Yeah.
So I asked you about, you say dangerous game for LSU. LSU's got a first-year defensive coordinator going up against an offensive wizard in Kelly, Chip Kelly, and that it'd be a dangerous game for LSU. I put the comment on Facebook. I get people hating on LSU, blah blah blah, and all we do is just trying to talk about it, possibly, just maybe, being a competitive game. I don't want to hear it, blah, blah, blah. And then UCLA smashes Hawaii. Hawaii stinks. Screw it. Blah, blah.
Yeah.
Just maybe next time, take a deep breath and listen a little bit. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, inevitably it's about matchups. But here's the thing about Mario. He's a real thorough and detail-oriented guy. He definitely smacks of Saban in every respect as it relates to how he goes about the business of coaching. He is a recruiting, or a recruitnik, the likes of which maybe only Orgeron would rival him, in terms of living, breathing, recruiting. He does that. But, I think in-game decisions with Mario are still questionable as far as making those decisions live during a game. I thought it jumped up and bit them when they didn't have Moorhead. The only loss they had was against Stanford, a bad Stanford team. They've only won 3 games. Mm-hmm. And he didn't have Moorhead, the offensive coordinator, the former head coach at Mississippi State.
Yeah.
And the former Penn State OC when James Franklin won the Big Ten championship, should have been playing in the playoff that year. But if Mario wins out and Oregon gets to the playoff, I think he becomes a hot commodity because he has done so well in recruiting and because of the foundation being offensive line and toughness and discipline. And again, you're still talking about a guy that would have an offensive coordinator that would be in charge of, managing the offense. But, it's always easier to manage an offense when you've got a great offensive line. Yeah. And Cristobal's offensive lines are just the best there are. So he's not a bad candidate, but I think he can't become a candidate until we see the finished product between now and Thanksgiving weekend. When we find out whether Oregon is good enough to play for and win the Pac-12 title, and then get a bid into the college football playoff, which they could. They could win every game they got left. Okay, but I'm just not trusting the Pac-12 right now.
You said he's a lot like Saban. Somebody did tell me the other day, not warm and fuzzy. Somebody said, "Have you watched his press cut?"
No, he is not. He is not. No, he's an enjoyable guy to be around. Very his meetings and the conversation pieces that we have. Like if I went down on the field before the game, Mario would make a point of coming over to say hello. He's a very engaging guy.
Right.
But when it comes to like game time, it's like Saban face. Absolutely.
I saw him do an interview the other day, Tim. It was the day that they played UCLA, I believe. And the College Game Day crew was in Los Angeles. He pops up and the fans all just start booing. Boo, boo. You can hear his face stayed stone-faced the whole time. He never cracked a smile. He never acknowledged that the people, he just stayed. And I was actually kind of impressed by that after, not to pile on Ed, but the UCLA fan and some of the stuff that he got baited on. So anyway.
If Ed had just limited some of those moments, it's just a shame that he got caught up in some of that and allowed the optics to look the way they eventually looked. I wish him well. I certainly hope things work out well for him. He will be revered forever at LSU, and I do hope that the relationship is solid for a long time to come, because he can be a great ally, to whoever the next head coach is. Imagine if it were Lane. That would actually be kind of funny to watch.
Yeah.
If the Lane train did roll into Baton Rouge.
Tim, I kind of make the comparison a little like Mike Ditka, right? Mike Ditka is always the head coach of those 85 Bears, even though some people, hey, Buddy Ryan did this and, this guy did that. And kind of the same thing, Joe Brady did this and Dave Aranda did that. But he'll always be the head coach on that, 85 Bears of LSU, so to speak.
Yeah. I think that how O moves forward and whatever he decides to do, the good news in all of this, not only the, $17.9 million buyout, but also the legacy of being LSU's coach with LSU blood that came from, the rags to riches to rags, so to speak, story, which in our state, we really celebrate people like that. So it can still have a really good ending for him over time. He's still a young man, could still accomplish a lot of things moving forward. But that connection, it's a little bit like Holtz when he went to South Carolina. I'll never forget, Lou said to me, he was leaving CBS at the time. He was working with me in '99 when he took the job. And he said, "Do you think if I take the South Carolina job, they'll forget me at Notre Dame?" And I was like, "Coach, no. That, Lou, you finished one win behind Rockney and you won a national title. And he's still the last one to win a national title, at Notre Dame. And so, his legacy was never harmed at Notre Dame because he took the South Carolina job, and I think the same would be true for Ed if he took a job elsewhere and did well.
Lou Holtz, South Carolina game.
South Carolina.
Sorry, Lou. All right. Well, Tim, look, I've kept you too long, man. Thanks so much for your time. I look forward to continuing to watch you on the Fox broadcast. And, I throughout the years, I appreciate, you giving time to the local yokels here over the years.
Well, you're more than that to me. And I do want to say this to you publicly. There was only one television station that was at that board meeting in August of this past summer, August 6th. And it was you and Channel 9. And
Dale Brown Court, by the way, for those wondering, the court and the PMAC will be named after.
And as I think I told you that day, I was just the setup man for what was going to happen on September the 10th. I was actually in Los Angeles for that USC game the week that the announcement happened and the vote was taken, and Dale got, his due. But
Yeah.
I just think it's wonderful that Channel 9 recognizes and understands that there's more to sports than just the game, and recognizes what's important to the fans. And I think that story was and is and should be moving forward. So I think that's fantastic. And I want to thank you personally for coming out there and covering it that day.
Oh, no problem. I mean, those are my first LSU games back in the day, going to those games, and Ricky Blanton and Chris Jackson, now Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And Dale just turned 86, right? He just had his birthday.
He and Saban on the same day.
That's right.
70th, something about Halloween, man. But yeah, it was, I talked to Dale just about, 2 or 3 times a week. I just talked to him the other day, and I mean, he's thrilled. And I saw where another old Channel 9 running mate, Andre Morrow, did a nice interview with Dale and with
Rudy,
with Collis Temple. It was Collis.
Yeah.
And it was outstanding. And let me just say this too, Collis Temple, without Collis Temple, I don't know that we get that thing done. I'm so happy that Collis is a board member at LSU. But again, as I mentioned, I think it's important. That's one of the reasons why Channel 9 has been the best and will continue to be the best, is because the sports staff has always worked its butt off, and the news division has always embraced the sports division. And that's why Channel 9 and WAFB-TV is still the best in Baton Rouge.
appreciate those kind words, Tim. That's a perfect way to end it right there. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
You got it. Take care.